Hello and welcome to another edition of It's Just Me with Brent Fox. Tonight, I'm actually going to be doing something a little different. I'm going to go ahead and talk about another passion of mine, which is football. So, as you can tell by the thumbnail, I'm going to be talking Pittsburgh Steelers training camp, and I'll sprinkle in maybe a little bit of boxing. Okay, so as I was mentioning, I'm going to talk a lot of Steelers, probably a little bit of boxing. Now, the first thing that I'll actually get into is the training camp portion of the season that all NFL teams actually have. Now, in this case, with our Pittsburgh Steelers, we're a relatively young team on offense with returning starters such as Kenny Pickett, Najee Harris, Pratt Fryermuth, and George Pickens, of course, along with veteran receivers like, excuse me, I'm sorry, and I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Calvin Austin Jr., who was a wide receiver with very, very, very fast feet. Um, as a matter of fact, he is one of the league's fastest receivers, and we want to see what he actually does with the two dreaded words, okay? When healthy, we just want to see how productive he actually is. You're flanked by George Pickens, and then you have very underrated, I believe, Deontay Johnson, that I believe that is going to have an over 1,000 yard year and probably over a 90 catch year. Um, in the receiving department. I also believe that Deontay Johnson may get 7 to 10 touchdowns this season as opposed to the zero that he had last season. Najee Harris is also somebody for me that brings about excitement because, of course, he's a running back. I love running backs. I think that Najee will probably hit the 1,200 yard mark. I'm looking for his average, which is usually around like 3.8 or 3.8 or 3.9 um, to actually go up to 4.2 yards a carry this particular season. And of course, the reason why is because of the new acquisitions that we have on the offensive line. We have picked up Isaac, I believe, Sayamalu, and we've also picked up, excuse me, Nate Herbig as a backup to add depth to a relatively solid offensive line that we already have. We did draft Broderick Jones as well to help on the left tackle side. And in my heart of hearts, I believe that Dan Moore is probably going to wind up stepping up this season. But since Broderick Jones is a first round draft pick, it's just going to be inevitable that he plays. Um, but I think that Dan Moore defies the odds, and I believe that he is actually going to be the starter at least game one. Um, but again, I am, and I would also be remiss if I did not mention number 80, Darnell Washington, who is basically a 6'8", 275 plus pound tight end who's known to be multifaceted. He's known as a devastating blocker, but he's also known as a very talented receiving tight end as well. Um, so I look forward to seeing what he's capable of doing this particular season. And to be quite honest with you, no pun intended, I look forward to seeing him grow and actually develop into a very dominant, old school type of tight end that usually is just sit in and block, and then they have maybe certain routes that they run and they make things happen after they catch the ball or they make tough catches in the end zone to help their team win games. More importantly, of course, they provide blocking for runners that may actually spring them from time to time. And that's what you look for in a tight end. Somebody who can actually just make sure that the seal is created on the outside so that back has a chance of gaining yardage by the chunk, um, which is, of course, very exciting to me. Now, kind of going back to the receiver side, you have, uh, of course, George Pickens, who is long, str- strong, pause, and he actually has some decent speed, and he is most known for making spectacular highlight reel catches, like the catch in the, of course, the more famous catch in the Cleveland Browns game. And also, he's made some pretty good catches over the season. I know that he made a great catch. Excuse me, the New York Jets game. He also made a pretty good catch, I believe, in the Buffalo Bills game. Even though, of course, that was not a good game for the Steelers as a whole. Um, but he, nonetheless, he's been able to make. Oh, and how could I forget the Baltimore Ravens game? On that, I believe it was a fourth down conversion, where he actually just plucked the ball out of the sky, unbelievably, and help the Pittsburgh Steelers stay in it and then eventually win. So George Pickens, of course, is known for making nearly impossible catches, and of course, supposedly he does that routinely, which is, of course, very very exciting. Then you would have, I believe, the slot man, which would be Calvin Austin. And I'm sorry, it's not Calvin Austin Jr. I think that it may actually wind up being Calvin Austin the third, if I'm not mistaken. Let me go ahead and take a look here. Sorry. Let me see here. Yeah, it's Calvin Austin the third. So I'm sorry about that. Um, excuse me, but again, he has game changing speed, and we want to, and from what I actually understand, he has some route running to go with it. Now, of course, the route running we would have to see in competition to kind of determine whether or not that is a valuable type of factor. But we definitely know that the speed is actually there. I mean, that's one of the things that you can kind of immediately point out when he's actually working. Um, so I would love to see how they would feature him in the slot. Matt Canada, who is our offensive coordinator, is of course known or notoriously known for jet sweeps. I do not look for that to aspect to actually change by very much. Um, so I would look for Calvin Austin III to get some of those said jet sweeps and hopefully build excitement as he actually has his number called on those types of plays. Um, and then you have a very, very reliable Deontay Johnson. And again, I think I've mentioned before that he may have a 90 catch, and I would say probably 1,000 yard plus season to go with it. Again, I believe that he would be able or capable to get 7 to 10 touchdowns this approaching season. What is very underrated about Deontay Johnson is his ability to run routes and, more importantly, his ability to gain separation. And this is what actually separates, yes, there's a pun intended on that, from the two other receivers that I just mentioned. If you are able to get separation in the NFL, that is invaluable. Most of the time, there is not much separation at all in the NFL because you are playing the world's best. When you play the world's best, the margin that you actually have against that particular person is going to be very small because, of course, they are the very best as well. So when you have someone who can literally separate themselves from their defenders and appear to be open a majority of the time, you're going to get him the ball. What I would like to see from Deontay is, of course, not moving backwards so much. But I would love to, of course, see him kind of progress as far as run after catch. Um, Even though sometimes he'll put on some dazzling moves, the actual moves that he puts on the defenders, as long as they're maybe horizontal to a certain extent, um, and not backwards, then I think that he would be all right. Um, Moving on to our, of course, much heralded defense. Our defense, I believe, is going to be the strength of this particular team. You have an all world pass rusher on one side, which is the legendary TJ Watt, who was Defensive Player of the Year, I think, back in 2022. Not 2022, 2021, sorry. 2022 season just passed, but 2021 Defensive Player of the Year. And then you have Alex Highsmith, who was, of course, severely underrated and not awarded a Pro Bowl for a 14 and a half sack season. I do not understand that. Um, you're in the top tier of the league in sacks, but you, but the, but the voting in the NFL doesn't vote you to a Pro Bowl. And what's more insulting is they voted someone who actually had less production than Alex Highsmith, just I guess more or less a popular name. I'm not sure. I'm not blaming the individual player for that, of course, because they don't have any control over something like that. What I would look closer at is possibly the fan voting, and then more importantly, the players union, who sets these things up. I'm not understanding how you can snub someone with a 14 and a half sack season, and they just no. Uh, I think it was a fluke, and that's it, which is basically what they were trying to say. Moving on, the inside linebacking position um, is going to be intriguing, to say the least. Now, we did just sign Quan Alexander, who is a playmaker, but the dreaded words, when healthy, he can be a difference maker on defense. The reason that, of course, the Pittsburgh Steelers were able to sign Quan Alexander is because Quan Alexander, it has an inability to stay healthy. I think that with rotating him with Cole Holcomb and excuse me, and the gentleman that we've already got from, I believe, Miami, along with oh my goodness, I am drawing a blank. Along with I think it's Robinson. Who was our linebacker last year, young linebacker from last year, who's a thumper and very good at stopping the run. Oh my goodness. I am very much ashamed of myself. Um, Excuse me for just a moment. I'm gonna get you these particular names because this is horrible. You think that I would be able to keep up with my own team a lot better than what I'm doing. But, unfortunately, sometimes real things happen and you can't always pay attention to to what you love as much as you want to. I'm rambling on, but give me just a few more seconds here. I'll get the name. Okay, Elandon Roberts was the gentleman that we've actually picked up from Miami. And then Mark Robinson is who I was talking about, the young linebacker out of Ole Miss, who was formerly a running back. So those two guys would actually, of course, help or at least add depth to the inside linebacker position, which is going to be a pretty big question mark as far as the Pittsburgh Steelers go. Now, hopefully, these gentlemen who are professionals are able to rise to the task, and it is going to be, I guess, a middle linebacker by committee type thing in order for us to be most effective, is what I would say. Moving on to the secondary, which is a more exciting portion of it, even though we lost a very solid player and a very underrated player, um, excuse me, in Terrell Edwards, um, I just think that the addition of Patrick Peterson, along with, of course, we still have Quasi, um, and then we also picked up Keanu Neal, which he's probably going to help more or less with like shorter distance downs. Believe it or not, I know he's listed as a defensive back, but he has like we'll probably feature him as maybe a pass rusher or um, maybe even kind of like a dime linebacker or an enforcer out there, like a strong safety type or a rover type, to where you can kind of just move him around the field to kind of see what he does. Also, Joey Porter Jr., who was the 32nd pick, he was technically a second round pick, um, shows promise. He's had some pretty good matchups with, of course, the first string receivers. Um, I would, I believe, from of course, what these reports are saying and the information that I'm getting, and some of the clips that I'm watching, I'm thinking that he's holding his own so far. There have been some instances where, of course, there was a viral catch that was actually made by George Pickens on him. But I think that people just kind of need to keep in mind that that's, first of all, practice. Okay. It's not a game. And then he pretty much did the same thing to someone else, and offensive pass interference was actually called because we brought a ref in. There was no ref when Pickens made that spectacular catch on Joey Porter Jr., who had perfect coverage. It was just nothing that, excuse me, there was just nothing that Joey Porter Jr. could actually do. George Pickens made an incredible play, as he does routinely, and that's all she wrote. But I think that could have happened to any defensive back, even a Pro Bowl defensive back, um, if George Pickens decides that he wants to do something like that on you. Um, the the other portion, of course, of the secondary I'm most excited about is Patrick Peterson. Now, it's not necessarily because I have this very high expectation of his level of play. I think that he is more or less going to be an on field coach as far as that secondary goes. And I'm excited about the fact that he'll have that secondary communicating and becoming a better unit because of it. I think that his leadership skills is actually what is going to make this particular group come alive. And of course, you have, excuse me, very intelligent players, um, like, excuse me, like Minka Fitzpatrick. You also have Levi Wallace, who's, I believe, is very underrated. He's a very intelligent player to me. Does a lot of film study. Technique most of the time is actually pretty good. He's most of the time he's in position. I would say probably 85 to maybe even 90% of the time, depending on, of course, depending on circumstance. And what I mean by that is whoever he's actually on, what assignment that he actually has, if he is actually guarding a man, which I think that we've actually done as far as our defensive back goes. I think it's press man that we usually play against opponents. And if Levi Wallace is actually able to just kind of hold his own this season, then honestly, um, he may be looking at a Pro Bowl season. But I know for a fact that Levi Wallace takes pride in making sure that he does his film study and works on technique to make sure that either passes are broken up or he makes a play on said passes and gives the ball back to the offense. Um, the other thing that I am really kicking myself that I did not mention um, was that Minka Fitzpatrick, of course, who is a perennial Pro Bowler and a huge difference maker, is also back in the secondary. I think the dynamic between him and Patrick Peterson and Levi Wallace, again, is going to raise this particular unit to the next level. I cannot wait to see what develops week one with these gentlemen, and I look forward to it getting better and better each week. Um, the other group, of course, is going to be the defensive linemen, which I'm actually excited about. We were able to re-sign Larry Ogunjobi. We actually drafted Keanu Benton, which I'm excited about the guy. Um, of course, like all draft picks, he's gonna show some type of promise or whatever, right? But at the same time, with his wrestling background, this is what got me. The wrestling background that he actually has, which means that if you have a wrestling background, you know a whole lot about leverage. And leverage is a huge advantage at any level in football, any level, even this particular level. Uh, excuse me, leverage is leverage is almost godlike. And then in our excitement, we're actually forgetting about DeMarvin Leal, who actually played well, of course, when he was not injured. But I look forward to Leal having a full and productive season. I think that he actually has a great deal of not only physical talent, but he also has, I would think, an impressive set of skills. And skills, of course, is something that you actually just work on. As far as being out there on the field, constantly working on, you know, hand techniques, making sure that your bend is actually, well, not your bend in this particular case. Like Liao is probably going to be more of a defensive tackle. So I would say probably yes, your leverage to drive back. Yeah, there may be some cases to where you're able just to attack a gap and then you're able to use more of a finesse type rush because of that. But again, I look forward to seeing DeMarvin Leal play a full season, and I'm looking for him to actually be very productive as well. Um, and then, of course, you have the incomparable Cam Hayward, who year in and year out makes a huge difference on defense. I think, Patrick Peterson, his leadership skills are going to make all the difference as well. Um, the concern that I may actually have, or one of my concerns that I actually have, is going to be special teams. Now, our punting situation isn't the greatest. As much as I personally like Presley Harvin the third, um, I'm not sure whether or not, if he continues to play the way that he's been playing, he's going to be playing basically. If he is able to improve, or show improvement on what he's been doing, and just be more consistent. Like if you even start off just by kicking the ball 40 yards every time, as opposed to just kicking it, oh, you kicked it maybe 30 yards, but you hit a booming 60-yard kick right after that. Um, I would rather I would rather you be dependable for that 40 than having to take a chance on you to see if you either gonna kick it 60 or if you're gonna shank it and wind up kicking it for 25. Like we can't keep having that. And again, as much as I like Presley Harvin in the third, um, I just cannot keep dealing with the inconsistency um, with his kicking. Now, of course, speaking of kicking, we have we have one of the best kickers in the game. Um, our number nine, because of course, Baltimore has their number nine, and they're just so proud of him. Uh, we have the Wizard of Boz, Chris Boswell, um, who I'm not just gonna be saying, oh yeah, he's second best, which I mean he technically is, second or third best really, which he technically is. But for us, he's reliable, and of course, he has won us several games by his kicks. So that particular part of I'm not worried about. As long as Boswell stays healthy, we should be okay. Um, the only other thing that I worry about on special teams is a solid returner. A solid returner is actually going to be able to, of course, give the offense good field position. And in that way, we can get our scoring up. I think that we ranked in the 20s out of a 32 team league. We ranked somewhere maybe in the mid 20s as far as total offense, which is not good. I mean, we've come back from that 2-6 start, and then wound up being 9-8, which is phenomenal. I mean, that is something that you basically can put in a movie, and it and it still be amazing. Um, but nonetheless, what I would probably say is that we definitely need someone at returner. And if it wasn't so much of a risk, I definitely would put Calvin Austin the third back there to return at least punts or kicks. If he does kickoff returns, then yeah, okay, I can see it. But I think punt returns will probably be better suited for him, even though they're technically more dangerous. Um, but I would definitely want Calvin Austin the third to show some, just a smidge or a little bit, just some of his actual kick return capabilities, and see if that is actually a dynamic that we can add in. Um, if he is able to do that and then turn around, get back in slot on the offense, and then score touchdowns that way, that's all the more reason to utilize him. And if we're doing that, of course, we eventually gonna have to pay him. So that aspect of it for me would be very exciting. I'm sure that there are other capable kick returners that are actually on the roster, and that is for Coach April to kind of figure out. Um, Now, the other thing that I just kind of wanted to talk about with my Pittsburgh Steelers, yes, my Pittsburgh Steelers, is their their record. Um, Most experts, as I do my quotey fingers, are believing that the Steelers are going to wind up being the last in the league. I do not believe that's true. We had less talent than we actually have right here, right now, this approaching season. I think there is also more confident and also more belief in what we're actually doing and we found out why we're actually doing it. I think that since the team had actually been through very fierce adversity and was able to overcome that particular adversity, why wouldn't they overcome that adversity now? As long as there aren't like a traumatic string of injuries, I believe that the Pittsburgh Steelers record is either going to wind up being, I would say, 10-7 or possibly 11-6, because of the extra game on the schedule. I definitely believe that the Steelers will make a playoff appearance. I think they upset whoever they have the playoff appearance against. They'll go to the divisional round, and unfortunately, I don't think that they would come out on top on that, but I certainly hope that I would be proven wrong on that. Um, and as far as, of course, our world famous coach, who is Mike Tomlin, goes, to me, he is one of the best in the business. Of course, he is a model of consistency, never having a losing season. I believe in his 16 to 17 year coaching career. Um, I just think with us having to play the Browns twice, I know that we can at least win one of them. Um, and then we're having to play the Baltimore Ravens, which again, even though they appear to be stacked on paper with the acquisition of um, Odell Beckham Jr. and then the drafting of Zay Flowers, who really scares me, by the way. That is who I am definitely afraid of, Zay Flowers. I think that if he actually develops into what he's supposed to, he is going to cause a lot of problems. All right. I'm not really worried about OBJ. I think that that situation, believe it or not, is more manageable than potentially a Zay Flowers, who has physical gifts like speed and unbelievable agility, um, along with a skill that he may have as far as route running, brings about a very dangerous combination. Um, I I do not wish him well. I really hope that he does not do well against us. But something tells me that he could be an entire problem for us. I just keep thinking about who's Torrey Smith. He didn't. Torrey Smith was a guy that would not be able to do anything against anyone. But once they actually played the Steelers with him as a Raven, um, they were just able to utilize Smith, and he would just rip us a new one each and every time we actually wound up playing. Um, and then, of course, we have the Cincinnati Bengals. I believe that we can split with the Bengals, to be quite honest. I do not think that it is a situation to where we wind up getting swept again. I think that we wind up winning one. And to be honest with you, I want to lean more towards like last year, where we actually won the first game and it was an away game at Cincinnati. But I think that we actually do what we're supposed to and we win at home. And then if we're having to go to Cincinnati after that, then there may be a bit of trouble. But I think that we would finally win at home against Cincinnati. Um, Now on to the little sprinkle of boxing. Um, I will be brief on this particular subject because we've talked about this at length, and to be quite honest with you, I'm kind of growing tired of it. Um, of course, the boxing's monumental event that took place last Saturday, the fight between Terrence Bud Crawford and Earl, um, just fill in the blank, whatever you want to call him, Spence, um, actually had of course, a fight. It was blatantly dominated by Terrence Bud Crawford, and then he wound up stopping Earl in the ninth round. Um, because Earl lost, there are several theories on what may have actually happened with Earl that could have caused him to lose. Some of which they could be true. Now, as far as a situation with Bud stacking raps or doing something illegal like that, I think KG dispelled that particular rumor. KG is a gentleman that is from the Usual Suspects podcast. Please check them out every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Um, on YouTube. They usually come on, I would say, Central Standard Time around 3:30 p.m. Central Standard on those particular days. Um, and then KG, who was actually very, very involved in boxing, he's definitely a trainer. I believe he may have been a former fighter as well. Would know those things, and he said that, of course, Terrence Crawford did wrap his palms in the tape, but he never wrapped his knuckles in the tape, forming that cast that everyone was actually concerned about. Of course, there were situations where people were trying to point out that Earl was too dehydrated to fight. And then the KG also mentioned that the doctor may have been able to look at Earl before the fight, and that seemed to raise potential red flags at that. Well, not at that particular point, but of course, after the fact when they studied that when of course, other doctors studied that particular situation. Um, what I would just mention about the results of the fight is this: there are some cases, regardless of whatever the situation is, that someone is just going to basically have your number for that particular night. And then, of course, that's what rematches are for. Um, you want to see if it was either for that particular night or if they just actually have your number. For me, um, because of the performance Terrence Crawford had actually put on and the type of defeat, which is more important, the type of defeat that Earl Spence Jr. suffered, um, I would not rush back to have a rematch with this same person in December. The reason for that is because Earl is going to have to make major adjustments to his style. And in order to do that, you need at least 2 to 3 fights. Two is the minimum. You got to have 2 fights or 2 training camps at least, and this is minimum, to actually have your skill set readjusted in order to try to stand a chance against this particular person. I do not believe that a weight change and then a turnaround camp is actually going to resolve the issue. Now, I hope that I'm actually wrong. The same boldness that Earl uh, believed in himself and provided when he fought Danny Garcia and then turned around and fought Yordanis Ugas, excuse me, would be the same instincts that he would use to go up in weight and then rematch Terrence Crawford. Now, this is a very dangerous game that Earl is actually playing. Again, I I would strongly urge Earl Spence Jr. to please have 2 to 3 fights to where you have an opportunity to go ahead and implement those changes that you're actually trying to put in your skill set. That way, you have a better chance of defeating Terrence Crawford. It is not, for me, and this is just my opinion, it is not wise to go right back into another training camp, try to implement a few things, and you're going up in weight, you're fighting the same person, and then expect a different result. Unfortunately, that kind of is insanity. I would think that you would want to make sure that you have readjusted as best you can, and then when you're feeling a bit more prepared, you can get back in there with Terrence Crawford and actually defeat him. But the rebuilding process does actually take time, and there's definitely a rebuild that's needed, even though it's just one opponent. And to be quite honest with you, I don't think that people should actually just write Earl Spence off. He lost to the very best, okay? He lost to the very best fighter on the face of the planet. That's what their fight was about. Unfortunately, there has to be a loser and then there has to be a winner. Terrence Crawford is the winner of that particular competition. So I don't want to discredit the man. I am not going to discredit the man. If there is something that actually comes out that is proven um, and says different, then at that point I can kind of re-explore what actually happened with that particular fight. But until then, I don't, I'm not going to try to buy into any theory. Just saying that Bud Crawford may have done something wrong, or Bud Crawford's team may have done something wrong. And anybody that knows me knows that I do not like most of Bud Crawford's team. I respect the heck out of Coach Red. I really do. I like Coach Red. I like Coach Red a lot. The Hispanic fella, I keep forgetting his name. He seems pretty cool. I like him. Bo Mack is not my particular favorite type of person. When Earl lost, the first thing I thought about was the revenge of Big Cheeto Man. I know messed up, but it was Big Cheeto Man's revenge. I just kept seeing him just chuckling and laughing and eating Cheetos and stuff. It's just a horrible picture to have in your mind. Um, and then of course you have the team mascot. I won't say his name because it's just not. It's just really not that. I'm just gonna go off on a tangent here. I don't understand how you can actually be that disrespectful and then try to command respect from a group of people. Um, and then go to great lengths to try to insult people, especially in the LDBC, because he thinks that they're against him when they're really not. Um, I personally, out of respect for Bud, try to keep what I say about that particular team mascot to a minimum, um, because I respect Bud that much. I was a fan of Bud Crawford when he actually came down here in Dallas, Texas, in 2013 on an undercard fight for Mikey Garcia. He was fighting at the American Airlines Center, and I think he knocked out a Hispanic guy in the sixth round. I think Bud may have had like his little dreads in back then too. He either had the dreads in or he like cut them down, like he just cut them down or something. But even back then, he was a force to be reckoned with. You could see the natural gifts there. You could see his skills developing. Of course they're not what they are now, but that natural talent was eye catching. And then with that fight, he mostly fought in the orthodox stance. I think that he may have changed stances maybe twice or three times, but I think he did most of his damage in the orthodox stance. Like he really just he put it on, buddy. Like there was no angle that was safe. There was no angle that was safe. Um, but needless to say, I'm not going to diminish the victory of Terrence Crawford. Those particular fans of his that just, of course, want to be annoying about it or whatever. I try to tune those guys out, and not pay them any mind. But I don't think that there was any foul play or anything like that as far as the fight went. Um, and unfortunately, I just think that Bud had Earl's number that particular night. I would I want to see a rematch? Of course I would, but I want it to be done the right way. And again, the right way for me, and this is just my opinion, but I have actually seen this work. Is that Earl actually just does not immediately rematch him. He takes maybe 2 to 3 fights. And then after he's kind of revamped his style, then he can go back in and try to get another shot at Terrence Bud Crawford. That being said, I certainly appreciate you guys' time. I know this was probably a very lengthy show. So I am going to go ahead and graciously sign off. And then I want to thank my LDBC family members. I want to thank anybody who could be popping into the chat that has any positive input. And then I want to thank my real inner circle, friends, family, loved ones. Thank you guys so much. I appreciate you. Y'all be blessed. Have a great night.